Social justice means applying the law equally to all people, but in practice, that doesn't always happen. I'm John Gonzalez. I'm here with my law partner, Jack DeRora. We practice law, we seek social justice. On this show, we reveal the conflict between the two.
You know, for a while, it was just us in the office over a cup of coffee talking about the news of the day. With social justice issues dominating our culture, our focus became how do we, as lawyers, make a difference?
And now it's not just us. Jack, today it's just us, and we're going to talk about whether we're losing our democracy.
I wasn't aware that we were.
Well,
Jeez.
Neither is my neighbor.
Really?
I've told you about my good friend who is a MAGA apologist. He would deny that because he thinks he's a free thinker and very independent. But anytime I send him something criticizing President Trump, he apologizes for it. I'll give you an example. You know, he complains that Biden may have used the the robo pen.
Oh, right.
You know, to do pardons.
Right.
And so I said, well, what do you think about Trump going on an interview and saying that he didn't know who this crypto billionaire was that he just pardoned?
Right.
And his response was, oh, it's just fake news.
Oh, that was fake news, the pardon?
Yeah.
Okay.
But you know, Biden may not have pardoned people. His auto pen did it. But in any event, I asked my neighbor, I said, it's concerning to me that a lot of what I'm seeing is showing that we're moving away from democracy. And I wanted to see what his, I guess, opinion on that was. And what he responded to was a non-response, which is, well, we're not a democracy anyway, we're a republic. Have you ever heard somebody kind of go down that route that we're a republic, like it makes a difference?
Yeah, I've seen that in a letter to the editor in some other places. It's like, so what?
Yeah, I think that what we call ourselves is less important than what really happens in America right now. And if you think about the big picture, we're a representative democracy or we're a representative republic, and I'm not sure there's a big difference between the two. We're represented at every level by people that vote on things that are supposed to make life better for Americans, I guess.
Right. What matters is whether the Constitution and the laws of the land are respected by elected officials. That's what it comes down to. So whether it's a republic, a democracy, whatever you want to call it, the Constitution and the laws are what we're concerned about.
He also has this theory that you have to tear it down to rebuild it better. And I thought, okay, is that what is happening? Because you and I came across, mostly you, this New York Times editorial that talks about the how would you say it, the indications that a country is sliding from a democracy to an autocracy.
I think you said it well.
Yeah. So is America sliding? You want to take a look at those? There was 12 points, and I thought the article made some very good observations.
It was really a nice article, and I would commend anybody who's listening to read it. It was published on October 31. It starts off with the idea of stifling dissent. And we're seeing things that we haven't seen, at least I don't think we've seen with any prior administration. For instance, the Associated Press has been denied access to the White House. And for what reason? Do you remember this?
No. Oh, because they didn't want to use Gulf of Mexico?
According to whatever standards the AP uses, which I always thought was the gold standard for journalists and how you write, they said, we're going to call it the Gulf of Mexico. Well, that got them banished, and now there's litigation over that.
And, you know, that's pretty prevalent in the Trump administration. I know that what I hear is that the press corps that follows the president is all handpicked, kind of right-wing media. And the criticisms I see from at least the shows that I watch is that, you know, the questions are all softball questions.
Well, I can't speak to that, but I do know that he berates those journalists who ask him hard questions. For instance, Mary is her name Mary? Yeah, Mary Bruce with ABC asked a tough question to Mohammed bin Salman, if I'm saying it right. I could certainly say MBS, that's easier. And Trump berated her. He said, "You're a terrible person. You're a terrible journalist. Who are you with?" "Oh, you're with ABC. We need to cancel its license." I never heard any president do that to a journalist in preceding years.
You know, I think I've told you this, I love the late night comedians.
Sure.
Because not only are they humorous in what they pick to talk about, but it's mostly political.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
And a lot of it's informative and then funny at the same time. But I've got friends of mine, like you take Jimmy Kimmel, they can't stand him. They don't think he's funny. They don't watch him. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's fine. But when the President of the United States and then the FCC chairman want to take him off the air and pressure his bosses to do so, that's what this article's talking about too. That's free speech at a national level. And just because our president is somewhat thin-skinned, very, very thin-skinned, they want to take him off the air. And now it's Seth Meyers, who I watch. It's interesting to me, Jack, that they haven't gone after South Park.
Oh, yeah.
Because now I'm not a fan of South Park. I will tell you, I don't. Its humor is not for me. It's a little more crude and gross. But I watch it because I got my eyes like, oh my gosh, are they really going there with the President of the United States? And they do. And crickets out of the White House. Why is that?
I think we did hear complaints about South Park in the past. I mean, I say in the past, not that long ago. But I think we did, and I can't recall what came of that grousing. Mm-hmm. But let's switch topics, not switch topics, but let's look at another example. This was stunning. It was 30 days ago or so, and it must have been the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, who said, if you want access to the Pentagon and to information, you have to sign a pledge. And without detailing what it said, it certainly limited what the journalists can do. Nobody signed the pledge except for, it might have been Newsmax. Not even the Fox journalists would sign it. So imagine trying to control the amount of information that comes out of the Pentagon. Again, nobody else has ever tried anything like that.
And I think a recent example would be these Democrat senators and congressmen who apparently have military background and security clearances, basically doing a video telling our troops, you do not have to follow illegal orders.
Oh, that was wonderful.
Yeah, and the Pentagon is now investigating that for some type of seditious or treasonous behavior, which is, again, just trying to stifle free speech. And at the highest level of politics, right, they're trying to stop the other branch from speaking out.
Well, one of those individuals was Mark Kelly, Senator, Arizona, married to Gabby Gifford, who was almost assassinated, certainly severely wounded in a shooting years back. So he's a retired Navy captain, also was in space some number of times. And I don't know if it was Hegseth or someone within the Department of Defense who intimated that maybe he was going to be reactivated to active duty so he could be court-martialed. So I'm thinking, okay, we're lawyers, right? So how's this play out, Gonzo? You have the court-martial, and the question is, did you say that members of the military are not obligated to obey unlawful orders? Yes, I did. What do you do with that? It's a statement of law.
Yeah, and it's true. Now, you may know this, having served, Jack, but I was listening to a show, and they said that the enlisted men take a different oath than officers. And enlisted men are supposed to follow orders given to them, while officers have the ability, I guess according to the oath, to challenge unlawful orders. And the explanation given by whoever was saying this on the air was, we don't want 18 and 19-year-olds on the front lines questioning orders. We just want them to fulfill them. But the officers have more of a duty to make sure those orders are lawful.
Okay, you'll have to excuse me. I took my oath about 100 years ago. I have no recall as to what I said, but I do recall, because I attended a number of re-enlistment ceremonies for enlisted men. They all swear to uphold the Constitution. Now, as to any details beyond that, I can't say.
Did you take your oath with George Washington when he took his?
Yeah, right after we crossed the Delaware. Yeah, something like that.
Well, so stifling free speech is an indication that we're sliding or moving away from democracy. I don't know how anybody can argue that that's not happening. I think some people may feel that it's justified because the press over the years has gone overboard, has created a lot of problems, but I just don't see that it's our government's role, certainly not the president's, to be out tweeting or talking about stifling free speech. But what's another indicia of moving away from democracy?
Well, we have the matter of how he is bypassing Congress in a number of ways in terms of spending, right? In fact, the whole matter of spending and taxing, well, maybe not spending, but taxing is before the Supreme Court now. We've never had a president, at least I don't recall we've had a president, who unilaterally put forth tariffs, right? Because that's in essence a tax, right? Because whether President Trump wants to admit it or not, Americans pay that price when they go to the shelf and buy something. We've never seen that before. And maybe I'm sounding like a broken record when I say we've never seen that before. But, you know, we're lawyers. We live under the idea of precedent. What have we been doing for the last 50 or 100 years? Well, seems to me we ought to be paying attention to precedent for what presidents do. And nobody ever thought that was a great idea to do it unilaterally.
In bypassing the legislature, to me, is a criticism of our legislature.
Oh.
I get a lot of news off the radio, and then I try to follow up, if something piques my interest. And a commentator was saying, we talk about co-equal branches of government. He goes, we have checks and balances between the three branches, but they're not co-equal. If you read the Constitution and the powers given to Congress, it well exceeds the powers of the executive branch and the courts. Congress has a ton of powers. That's an interesting point. I would invite all our readers to go online and look up the Constitution, because Article 1, which is Congress, it specifies a long laundry list of things that Congress does. When you look at the president, it's very general language. It doesn't really set forth any specific. It must set forth some specific duties. I can't recall them. But for the most part, it's general language. So what we've seen, and this isn't just with Trump, but I think it's more highlighted with the second Trump administration, is Congress has abdicated its authority in many ways to the executive branch. My guess is overall it's because they want to get reelected. They don't want to do anything that's maybe unpopular, so let the president do it. But they've given away powers, and I was listening to one senator talk about how our Senate now does nothing. And, the whole idea to get into office is to wield power, and that they're just giving it away basically to a president. And, like you say, the Congress has the ability to tax and spend, and they are allowing Trump to do it without being challenged at all. Now, the question is, will the courts step in and say, wait a minute? But the commentary that I heard was, well, if Congress wants to give away its power, is the court going to say you can't do that? And the answer to that was then given, which was, they should, because let's say Congress tells Trump, yeah, you can go ahead and do all the tariffs you want. The next time Congress takes up that idea, maybe when the Democrats control, they pass a bill that says, no, you can't do it. Well, what's Trump or the next administration going to do? They're going to veto that bill. So once they give up a constitutional power, they can never get it back by the way our system functions. So the idea is that the courts do have to step in and save Congress from its own ineptitude.
Well, it is ineptitude, but it's interesting that you talked about the power of Congress and why these men and women don't speak up. They're not protecting their power. If they were, they would speak up. They are protecting, instead, their own prestige and recognition. I can't imagine being in a position where I am willing to do things that are inconsistent with what I think is correct just so I can stay in office. Now, of course, we shouldn't confuse virtue with lack of opportunity. I've never been tempted that badly. But that's exactly what they're doing.
And I think a tipping point is it's either here or it's coming, and I think it's these military strikes on these fishing boats that are carrying drugs. Let's assume they are running drugs.
Yeah.
A lot of commentary is they're not running drugs to the United States, but they are running drugs out of this, Venezuela?
It's Venezuela from where the boats emanate. That's all we know.
So we're basically, what do they say? Prosecutor, jury, and judge.
All at one time.
All at one time, just executing these people. And I think Congress people are starting to say, wait a minute, this is kind of ridiculous.
Well, it's a use of force that concerns everybody. And from a practical point of view, I'd be willing to bet that if we talk to people who are involved in the business of drug interdiction, they would say, this is small potatoes. If you really want to cut off the source of drugs, this isn't how you do it. And now, to put that in perspective, and I think you and I have talked about this, we can't keep drugs out of penitentiaries in the United States, right? We haven't figured out how to do that. So we think that, destroying these boats is going to make a difference on a national level.
And it makes us look, I don't know. America stands for a lot of things that are good and just and ethical, and this just takes away from that. And I argue with my MAGA friends because they're like, well, anytime you can stop drugs, even if it's not going to make much of a difference in the bigger picture, it's still a good thing. And I said, look, if Congress authorizes it, then I guess I'll have to say, well, that's our system. But Congress isn't authorized. It's one or two people in the White House that have decided they're just going to kill people because they believe that they're doing something that's wrong.
So here's the big question. What's going to happen if President Trump orders airstrikes on Venezuela? Doesn't that sound a little reminiscent or a little, I'm not using the right words. Doesn't that resemble to some extent what Putin did in the Ukraine?
Sure.
Just unilateral force without provocation? Now, Trump would say there's provocation. They're selling drugs. Okay,
sure.
but
and
that's...
Putin said there was provocation, so,
Yeah, he said there were Nazis in the Ukraine. Seriously, that was part of the rationale.
So you got a president that's stifling free speech, that's basically starting and continuing wars without congressional approval. You also have him persecuting his political opponents, which is another indicia of moving away from democracy.
Yeah, what's startling is, and this has been in the press a lot, the DOJ has become his personal law firm in a way that we have never seen. Presidents always maintain arm's length from, it was part of the cabinet, but it was a secretary in the cabinet that you weren't having lunch with on a regular basis.
Well, we again see the judiciary pushing back somewhat. This whole Comey and Letitia James saga, I think it makes me feel fortunate in a sense that Trump has appointed people that aren't very good at their job, and the learning curve is just really devastated Trump's ability to go after his political opponents.
Well, if he had hired competent people, or as the news likes to say, if he had hired adults in the first place, he wouldn't be able to use the DOJ in the way that he has.
This prosecutor who was, I guess, Miss America.
Was she a Miss America?
Or Miss Utah.
Miss something.
She's a very attractive lady,
yeah.
but, she did insurance defense work, which is what I've done for a good portion of my legal career. And I can't imagine standing in front of a grand jury and trying to present a case. Apparently, she wasn't very good at it. But you would think she would have been at least smart enough to have somebody walk her through the process, because my guess is this was one of the most important things she's ever done in her legal career.
Oh, that's a really good point. I never thought about that. Yeah, this was a quantum leap in terms of significance, more than likely, for her. Hey, I want to take a left turn here for a minute. I want to talk about your MAGA neighbor for a minute. All the things that we're talking about are likely not of importance to him because they don't touch him. And I'd like to say that this was my original thought, but I got the idea after listening to the Sam Harris podcast yesterday. All these things that we're talking about are miles away from the average citizen. The average citizen is worried about the price of bread, buying a house, and just making it to retirement. Free speech, blowing up cigarette boats in the Caribbean, prosecuting Captain Scott Kelly, those are miles away. Your neighbor's life goes on today just as it did 10 years ago. So I'm not surprised that a lot of Americans, not just your neighbor, aren't concerned about these things. These things, as important as they are, they're miles away from the everyday life of the average person.
What I've noticed, too, about my neighbor is that he doesn't stay, at least claims that he doesn't know what's going on with these, let's say, character issues with our president or with the administration or incompetency. I'll ask him about something. I'll give you an example. I was notarizing a document from him, and when I was signing it, he goes, "Boy, that looks like Donald Trump's signature, very close." And I said, "Well, you know what? He signed that birthday card." And, so everybody has seen what he can do with his signature. And he looked at me like, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "You've certainly seen or heard of the birthday card."
Right.
No. Because you know what? You're right, Jack. As far as he's concerned, he's got it okay.
Right.
And he doesn't want to hear anything else. And I think a lot of people are, because when you start to say, look, the president is denigrating women on a regular basis. And, this guy's got a wife and a daughter. And I know he wouldn't like that.
Right.
But he just, low information. I know what I know, and I don't need to know anything more about it. So I think you're right. I think that people don't pay attention till it affects them. And a lot of us that are paying attention already know, right? We don't need to be convinced anymore about who Trump is.
The only way that President Trump is really going to encounter strong headwinds is when enough people say, well, holy cow, the economy's not helping me. The housing situation is bad. And didn't he promise to fix those things? He's going to have to stumble on the basic aspects of what he ran on. This big picture stuff, people don't see it.
No, and we talk about dissent in speech. What we didn't talk about there is, the misinformation that comes out of the administration to justify it.
Oh.
who's the blonde press secretary?
Carolyn Levitt.
Carolyn Levitt. I heard a derogatory term about her, but I guess it's okay because you know how she justified Trump by saying, well, he's just blunt and he speaks his mind and we all love him for that.
Right.
And so, somebody called her bullshit Barbie.
Oh.
And was just speaking their mind,
Right.
Listen, she's got a tough job, but she seems to love it. But basically on the Comey indictment, she's like, well, he lied to Congress. So, why is anybody happy that we weren't allowed to prosecute him?
She is good for one thing. She is a stunning example of how to present her position. And I'm being dead serious when I say that. She is confident. She is forceful. She presents well. Unfortunately, the message she presents is usually fiction.
And to me, and go back to my neighbor, what I've told him is look, every time I bring up something about Trump, you apologize. So you lose credibility.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's 100% perfect, and certainly not our president. And Miss Levitt, at least you can say she's just doing the job she's paid to do.
Right.
But she loses credibility to me.
Oh, she hasn't. Yeah, it's beyond words. Let's get back to the things that threaten democracy. Here's something that really bothers me is all these masked ICE agents patrolling the cities. That is scary stuff. We have never been in a situation where law enforcement goes to an area en masse, masked, and rounds up people based on probably how these people look and how they sound. And what was really interesting, if I heard this correctly, they were actually rappelling down from helicopters in Chicago. I mean, that's assault-type tactics. And the administration justifies it because, well, these folks are being doxxed. I don't know why they should be protected any more than the local Columbus Police Department.
And some of the times when you're watching the images, you see local law enforcement without masks right next to a masked ICE agent, I assume. I was talking to somebody the other day. They said they were detoured in Westerville down some area that they never drive, and they actually came across an ICE facility. And the only reason they knew it is there was a bunch of people outside protesting, and they had signs saying, this is an ICE facility, and, go home ICE, or, I like, life without ICE, or whatever the signs say. But, it's in Westerville, apparently. Now, I haven't heard of anybody being arrested. I don't, at least it hasn't made the press. But I agree with you. And again, the courts are trying to push back. But we had our constitutional expert here, Mark Brown, and he said he thinks the president may have the authority to do this.
I don't recall Mark saying that. Did he really?
Yeah, he thinks that the courts are going to be reluctant to challenge President Trump's determination that this is necessary, however the phrasing of the statute is that allows him to do it. But it just is, it's a scary thought. I was asking a friend of mine at dinner the other night who is a Trump supporter. I've got a lot of Trump supporter friends in my life.
I'm surprised you are so calm about it as opposed to beating your head against the wall.
Well, he's ex-military like you, and I asked him first what he thinks about generals having to do 20 push-ups or whatever the thing is, and he was all over that. Yes, they should. I had to do it every year, And I said, all right. I said, you need a 60-some-year-old guy that has to run a mile in so many minutes to run the military. But, the rules are the rules. So, that's fine with me. But I asked him, I said, what do you think about the military being in these cities? Well, Trump's trying to clean them up and make them safe from these immigrants that are violent. And I said, yeah, I'm okay with that, I guess. But are you okay with the fact that they're arresting people that are American citizens, and even the ones that are here legally that are immigrants aren't violent? and all you can say is, yeah, that might be a problem. That's it? It just might be a problem?
I think the news has been, well, let's back up for a second. We know from research, in fact, we talked about this some number of podcasts ago, that the rate of criminality for immigrants of all types is still lower than for native-born Americans, right? Number one. Number two, the news has been pretty consistent that a number of these people, their only criminality is that they're here unlawfully. They don't have arrest records for breaking and entering, murder, etc. So we're deploying soldiers not for the purpose of arresting the worst of the worst, which is one of my more unfavorite terms, but just because they have accents, they look a little different. Maybe they're here unlawfully, maybe not, but we round them all up. It's reminiscent of what autocracies do in other countries.
Because you take it a step further, and basically what's happening now is that the Trump administration has its own police force.
Right.
You know, they're recruiting this, take out the National Guard, which they're using, courts are starting to say improperly, but they actually have a police force, like you say, masked, that they're deploying to these cities and doing what Trump and the administration want them to do. And I heard a statistic that said that a lot of the recruitment comes from our prison system. Prison guards are leaving the prison system to join ICE.
Oh, that's interesting.
Well, they're given incredible bonuses, I guess, and
Sure.
they're paying better. So you've got this, recruitment area that they're picking from, and kind of the article was, these are not the best.
You're trying to dance around this, and I appreciate your discretion. Yeah, you've got it sounds like what you're saying is we're recruiting a bunch of individuals who are more than eager to show their bravado on the streets. Does that sound about right?
Yeah. And, probably don't have the training that they would need to what they're being forced to do. But it's a scary thought. And I wonder with the next administration if there'll be a pullback from it. If the Democrats get the presidency, is there going to be a pullback from this police force that has been developed?
You've characterized this in a way I never thought. ICE has become the president's personal national police force. And they're not subject to all the regulations and concerns that local police are subjected to. That's interesting.
You would think the governors would be more up in arms about this, because, and especially the Republican governors that are all for states' rights, right? And the federal government overreach and they're too big. But you don't hear a peep out of DeWine on this. Now, the Democrat governors are up in arms. That's because they're going to their cities. But who was it? Newsom and the Illinois governor, maybe, I can't remember.
I can't remember his name, for goodness sake.
Yeah, I like him.
He's a very well-spoken man. Sorry for not being able to remember his last name, but he's very well-spoken.
Well, I guess they were going to pull out of this governors association because the other governors aren't supporting state rights. And, what does it hurt DeWine to push back? He's done with politics. He's going to move into retirement now.
We have only seen, as far as I can recall, one time when a governor made a really hard decision and wasn't concerned with the politics of it, and he did it in a national way. Do you have any idea what I'm talking about?
Well, it's got to be COVID.
No.
No, what?
Kasich did not attend the the 2016 Republican convention because he knew that Trump was going to get it. So he didn't go to the convention in his own state. Mm-hmm. Now, have you heard much about Kasich lately? But my point is, whether they have anything in the short term to risk, my sense is they're all very afraid to buck the cult of personality. It's that simple. And and if I ever do anything like that, I would hope you would hit me with the closest 2x4 that you have and say, Jack, what are you thinking?
You know, I think about us, and we have such a small influence. Mm-hmm. We have some influence, I suspect, with the people we meet every day. But when you have an influence like a governor or the president, you got to be a lot more careful about what you're doing. And I just don't see it from the Trump administration, what they say and what they do. They know they're influencing people in the wrong way. I
take issue with that. I don't think he sees it as the wrong way. That would take some moral conscience. He wants what he wants. He is living in his own world. Right and wrong, moral, immoral. Those concepts, I'm confident, don't exist within him.
You may be right. I think there's different personality types in this administration. There's somebody like Trump who I can't figure out why he does what he does. But then you have the people like J.D. Vance who are smart enough to know and have in the past done some discerning thought on what's going on. Obviously is very critical of the president, and now he's being very hypocritical because now he's supportive. But J.D. Vance is not a dumb guy. He knows exactly what he's doing. Marco Rubio the same way. They're in it for some other motivation, and they're willing to sell themselves. Then you have the people like Carolyn Leavitt who are just all in because maybe they don't know better. They're just sold on the cult of Donald Trump. So, you know, it's different. It's a confluence of different people that have a lot of influence. And I agree with you, Jack. They don't. A lot of them don't think it's wrong, but there are others there that know it's wrong and they just don't care.
Well, that shouldn't be surprising.
We were talking about moving away from democracy, and another one of the indicia in the New York Times article was defying the courts.
Oh,
and we were trying to you and I were talking about it the other day, and it's when this
the flights to El Salvador.
Yeah, and they're going to hold a contempt hearing. And the whole idea behind this, if I understand correctly, is that the court didn't want these flights to go forward, and the administration basically let them go forward.
And you remember what the rationale was? Well, when you gave that verbal order, the planes were already in the air, so your orders don't matter anymore.
Yeah, so the Court of Appeals apparently greened light an investigation into whether somebody should be held in contempt.
Right.
Now, the person that may be in contempt is now a federal judge, right?
Oh, Emil Bove?
Yeah, because I saw something where basically whatever role he was in the DOJ at the time said, well, if the courts don't allow us to do this, we may have to tell the courts to F off.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't think that's been contested. Well, let me rephrase that. There's a whistleblower from the DOJ who came forth and said, if the courts don't like what we're doing, you have to tell them to screw off.
Yeah.
But let's substitute more colorful language. Now, I don't think Emil Bove ever denied that comment. I'm not sure. I would imagine it came up in the confirmation hearing. But now he's a Court of Appeals judge for the Third Circuit. So Can he be hailed before a district court in D.C.? That's a great question.
Well, the other thing is, too, that Trump can just pardon these people, which is the worst part about our Supreme Court granting Trump immunity, and then you pair that with his ability to pardon people. Nothing that he's doing or his administration is ever going to face any accountability if he just pardons people that are found in contempt, which I wouldn't see why he wouldn't.
Regrettably, I think you're right.
Yeah, it's a free-for-all. So I do think that Trump defies the courts in another way. And again, we go back to you and I are lawyers. Our clients come to us and they want legal advice. Well, the reason we know what kind of advice to give them is because we have all these court decisions to look at, and we research it, and we say, okay, if you do this, this is the likely result.
Right.
And I imagine criminal lawyers do the same thing with their clients, right?
Sure.
There's got to be people telling the Trump administration that some of this stuff is questionably borderline illegal.
Right.
Maybe just actually illegal. But they do it anyway because especially Trump, understands that the legal system is slow and cumbersome. A lot of gray areas for lawyers to play with. Years can go by before anybody tells him you're not allowed to do it. And then he's emboldened because the Supreme Court, when it wants to greenlight something he does, takes it up immediately.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's been in front of the Supreme Court as much as the Trump administration. It's just stunning.
What's another one of our indicia that we're moving away from democracy? It's starting to concern me more and more as we go through this list.
I like how he has marginalized women, minority groups, and we can look at the military for examples of that. Not long after he took office, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, that's a 4-star general, I can't remember his name, but he was a black man. He was relieved of his position. Why? Because he was black. And I imagine, they never said it, but
Sure.
But the implicit rationale was, oh, he must be a DEI hire, as if DEI is a bad thing. And then, what else did the Trump administration do? The chief of naval operations was a woman. She was relieved of her position. Why? Because she's a woman. What is that saying about how we value people?
Well, and then their attack on gay, lesbian, transgender, the attack on women in the press. That's a daily thing with Trump.
Oh gosh, it's horrible.
The whole idea of the Epstein files and just a lot of people take that to show that this administration is not supportive of women's rights. It's pretty disappointing all in all.
One of the pillars of autocracies is having scapegoats. And that's what he's doing in some form or fashion. If blacks get promoted, it's because they didn't have the merit. Or women probably didn't have the merit. And LGBTQ, well, they're just strange. It's always denigrating somebody. It's trying to have success at the expense of criticizing others.
One of the other indicia brought up in this article that is spot on is targeting higher education, those types of institutions. How can you deny that that's happened, right? Trump doesn't like the liberal colleges or what they're teaching, and he has attacked them with a vengeance. Again, a lot of the MAGA people are in favor of that because they think that this has been a detriment to the country and that the United States government gives a lot of money to Harvard. And why are we giving all this money to Harvard when it's just a bastion of liberal ideals? And I try to explain to them that it's also a bastion of cancer research, and that maybe that would be a good thing, whether it's a liberal researcher or a conservative researcher. But certainly he's attacked the higher institutions, and a lot of them are kowtowing to him.
Well, what they have at stake is significant, and it's all those federal funds to conduct the research that they do. Unless I'm mistaken, every threat consists of pulling back on the federal funding for research. So then I thought, well, maybe that's a good idea. Maybe if colleges can find other ways of funding their research, now there's no connection to the federal government. But unfortunately, we've got this relationship where they're now dependent to conduct the research they want to conduct.
And, I probably would follow that logically, that we can separate the federal government funding of these places like Harvard that have a lot of other alternative funding. But to me, that's a legislative function.
Oh.
If our legislature determines that they're not going to award that money, again, that's the system we live in. And it's just another example of Trump bypassing the legislature and doing what he thinks is right.
Yeah, that's the troubling aspect. It's one man, truly one man, supported by Project 2025 and all the people who, I hate to say it, Trump would never think of this, who are using Trump to get what they want. But it's one man vocalizing what should be good for the nation. That's really, since when has that been the way we do business?
A couple of other things in the article that, again, are spot on. You lose your democracy when you have a cult of personality, right?
Oh.
And oh, my Lord. That's what is happening. The way that his cabinet talks to him in public and glorifies him, and people like my neighbor that are just all in and can't seem to criticize him, it is a cult of personality. And, fortunately, if it's a cult of personality, when that person is out of office and out of control, hopefully that goes away. Who knows? Is there going to be somebody else to step up into that, to fill that void?
Well, let's assume we have a Democrat in office in 2028. If we see the same thing, I'll be just as disappointed as I am now.
Yeah.
That's a terrible thing. And, somewhat related to this in a peripheral way is what we talked about, that presidential memorandum on national security, where Trump is empowering the FBI and law enforcement in general to seek out groups who are hostile to those who hold traditional American visions of family, religion, and morality. Wow. So what is a traditional view of family, religion, and morality? 100 years ago, a traditional view on morality was that slavery was okay. So are we going to be looking out for people who think that's a bad idea? Who is the person who decides what the American view of morality, family, and religion is?
Well, it also focuses on ideological beliefs such as anti-fascism. There's a good argument to be made that Trump deals in fascism. So is he going to prosecute himself and the members of his cabinet? It's, to me, another example of bypassing the legislative function and just Trump trying to amass power for himself. And you can't trust this administration, the DOJ, to implement this type of vague policy fairly. I just can't see it right now.
Well, you just said two things that are inconsistent. Enforce fairly and vague policy. Those two things just never go together. But I think I'm at risk personally. Remember our good friend Jim Meany, right? Mm-hmm. I can't tell you how many times we were meeting at the Italian club and trying to get people to join our anarchist club. Oh, I should. Maybe we have to edit that. But this was.
Who are you again? I have no idea who I'm talking to right now.
But this was in the days when George W. was invading Iraq. We were beside ourselves, saying, "Okay, it's time for the anarchist club." So maybe I may not be here a couple weeks from now.
Jack, we could keep talking about this forever, but the last 2 points, again, I think are spot on. Using power for personal profit and manipulating election laws. Topics that we could go on and on about that are so prevalent in the Trump administration. I had to laugh because, again, my good friend, neighbor, was all in on Bitcoin, and it's just tanked. Trump lost several $1 billion of his wealth in this, this type of investment that his own family developed.
But he's made it back, hasn't he?
I think recently he's lost a bunch of it again.
Oh, has he?
So, yeah, but he is profiting off of, there was a short take on one of the Comedy Central shows that shows all the things he sells. Tennis shoes, watches, the Trump Bible.
Steaks.
It's just ridiculous. And now what he's trying to do with election laws, there's some rumors that he wants to put the National Guard in the polling places to ensure a fair election. And, I wouldn't put it past his administration to try that. And, of course, there'll be legal challenges to it.
It's a sad state of affairs.
It is. As always, my friend, it's nice to talk to you about these things so our listeners know you and I don't just talk about it when we're doing our podcast, but we talk about it often. And it's illuminating to me. I wish some of my MAGA friends were a little bit better informed because I just think that they may come away with a different point of view if they were.
Somebody smarter than I probably said this, but democracy is hard work. I mean, you've got to keep yourself abreast of what's going on, and that's just too much for the average person to do. Hey, our thanks to WOSU and our sound engineer, Dalton Jones. If you like what you've heard today, tell a friend. We want this to be more than just us. We want it to be about all of us. Think about liking us or following us on our podcast. Submit a review. If you do these things, you help elevate our profile so that other podcast listeners can find us. We'll be back in another week or so with another social justice issue. Until then, so long.